Okay, noting time is 6 o'clock. I'm going to call this meeting.
We just haven't started the live stream yet. Could you just
Oh,
wait
okay.
1 sec? Thank
Sure.
you. And it's started.
Okay, thank you. So I'm calling to order this regular meeting of council. First, I'd like to acknowledge that we are conducting this meeting on the unceded traditional territory of the Tonawis First Nation. First item on our agenda is adoption of the agenda. So I'll just make that motion that the June 16th, 2021 regular council meeting agenda be adopted as presented. Do I have a seconder to that? Second by Councillor Savage. Any discussion? And just noting that we have received some additional information regarding items, just make sure I got this correct, 9 and item A. Okay. All right, so hearing nothing, I will call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. That takes us on to start of the consent agenda. We have one item listed under the consent agenda. I'll just make the motion that the recommendation listed for item 7A in the consent agenda be approved. Do I have a seconder to that? Second by Councillor Savage, and I will call the question. All those in favor? Okay, that's carried unanimously. That takes us on to public input period under 8. So through to staff, I understand we have one registered speaker, or is that correct? And if you're speaking, you're muted. So just so you know, I can't see your faces, obviously.
Am I off now?
Yeah, you're on
yes,
now.
We have, yeah. We have one registered speaker, Mr. Brian Henning.
Okay. And I don't see him on our screen at this point.
He is signed on. Yes, he is signed on.
Okay.
So you could call on him.
Okay, Mr. Henning, if you can state your name and address for the record, please, and you have 2 minutes.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Brian Henning. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Yeah.
Thank you. I'm at 3088 Barons Road here in Nanaimo. I am here tonight as the applicant for the development permit application DP21-16 for the Clark Med properties to provide a brief comment and confirmation. Specifically, with respect to the variance of the watercourse setback for the drainage ditch, I want to confirm that the development layout plan was based upon the advice and reports of our registered professional biologist, Mr. Steve Toth. This plan formed the foundation of our rezoning application. The 2-meter SPIA on either side of the drainage ditch will lie within a 15-meter wide park corridor, which is part of the neighborhood networking plan, and within the rear yards of lots 73 to 79 and 86. The variance request is consistent with and integral to the development plans and the planning for this project. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And we have no other speakers registered. Yeah, so moving on.
No, yeah, no other speakers.
All right, so that takes us under item 9 of our agenda, so legislative matters. So we have under 9A, the 2020 annual municipal report. I'll just make that motion that the 2020 annual municipal report be accepted. So is there a seconder to that? Second by Councillor Savage. Discussion. I'm fine. I'll move to the seconder and then we can start a speakers list if required. Okay, hearing nothing, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Okay, it's carried unanimously. That takes us on to item 9B. So we have the development permit application for 7885 Clark Drive West and 6790 Phillip Road and 7370 Ware Road. There's a motion in the agenda. Is someone prepared to move that motion? So moved by, and if you can read it, Councillor Gusselbrook, please.
That development permit number DP 21-16 be issued to the property owner for 7885 Clark Drive West and 6790 Phillip Road and 7370 Ware Road.
Okay, and do we have a seconder to that? So second by Councillor Proctor. Discussion on the motion, so through to the mover and then to the seconder, and then I will start a speakers list.
Yes, thank you. This development permit is another step following the approval of this subdivision application. I've read through the reports, both by staff as well as the report prepared by Mr. Toth. I understand from listening to Mr. Henning this evening that the 2-meter proposed variance for the ditch that runs north-south lies within a 15-meter corridor. I've read the letters that we received from the public. I am going to go with the staff recommendation. So I'm in favor of it. Thank you.
Okay, and through to the seconder.
I don't have anything to add right now.
Okay, and through the rest of the council, start a speakers list as required. Okay, Councillor Savage.
Yes, are we now discussing the development variance request?
That is correct.
So if this is approved, then we're automatically approving the development's variance request. Or what's the procedure here? Is that a separate motion?
Through to, I guess, Director Young was probably the best one to answer that.
Through the mayor to Councilor Savage, yeah, it's all part of the same application. So it's a development permit with a variance.
Okay, thank you. I'll speak to the variance first then. So the agenda in the staff report refers to this requested variance, and it's a variance to the streamside protection setbacks in the zoning bylaw, which is the streamside protection section. And it reads, development must not occur within 15 meters of a stream boundary or a distance determined by a qualified environmental professional, whichever is greater, in accordance with the Riparian Area Protection Act and the municipality's development permit area requirements. So if we go with the zoning bylaw, it's automatically the 15 meters per the instruction of that section. And within this setback, it states no development of any kind, including tree and vegetation removal and land alteration. And the zoning bylaw definition of a stream means a water course or body of water, whether or not usually containing water, and any of the following that is connected by surface flow to a water course or a body of water referred to in paragraph A1, a ditch, whether or not usually containing water or a wetland. So the qualified environmental professional Toth states a 2-meter setback is adequate. The zoning bylaw states 15 meters. The zoning bylaw states you must go with the greater of the two. And where the qualified environmental professional report describes an area designated as streamside protection, and in enhancement area, SPEA, the development permit will not allow any development activities to take place therein, and the owner will be required to provide a plan for protecting the SPEA over the long term through measures to be implemented as a condition of the development permit. And the report by the qualified environmental professional cloth states that 2 meters setback is adequate. So I'm just setting the stage of the facts here. And to further underline that a local government can have its own autonomous regulations, which can exceed provincial riparian areas regulations. Below is the provincial guidebook. It's the riparian areas regulation for waterfront homeowners and property developers. Guidebook, August 1st, 2016. Revised version 3.0, published by Ministry of Forests, Lands and Natural Resources. And it states on page 12, some local governments have created more detailed community level plans for protecting greenways and habitat values, maintaining drainage corridors, creating park space, mitigating storm water impacts, etc. And we did such a thing in our rezoning bylaw, which is the 15-meter setback. Where these standards exist, any conditions of development that exceed those of the RAR must still be adhered to. That's the riparian area regulations. This may add to the developer's assessment requirements or increase the riparian protection beyond the riparian area regulations standards. The ministry will respect decisions by local governments within the riparian area regulations. So that underlines that the provincial government supports having a zoning bylaw which exceeds what the riparian regulations might require, what the qualified environmental professional, what he suggests are
Point of
adequate.
order, please. I have a
Thank
point
you.
of order.
Yeah, go ahead, state your point of order.
Councillor Savage has spoken for longer than 5 minutes.
I have him just at about 5 minutes because there was a question asked, so I am timing it, but for your point of note is, or point of order is noted, and Councillor Savage, if you could just bring it to a close, you'll have another opportunity to speak.
Yeah, I was asking questions, so I'll just add that time if I may, and plus the interruption right now, thank you. So the jurisdiction, it respects the jurisdiction to set higher standards for environmental protection is the key. And the one referred to, which I'll speak to next, when my next turn is, that's referred to in the OCP, is the riparian areas regulation assessment methods. Okay. So thank you.
So I'll open the floor to additional speakers on this item. And then we can move to a second round. Okay, so additional speakers. So Councillor Savage, you've indicated you wish to speak again.
Yes, thank you. So in this is the regulation referred to in the OCP and DPA 1. And it's called the Riparian Areas Regulation Assessment Methods. And in it, it says 1.42, streams. The Riparian Areas Regulation defines a stream as any water course, natural or human-made, that provides fish habitat that contains water, a perennial or season basis, is scoured by water or contains observable deposits of mineral alluvium or has a continuous channel bed, including a water course, is obscured by overhanging vegetation. A water course may not itself be inhabited by fish, but may provide water, food, and nutrients to streams that do support fish. Well, the one that transverses this property and flows into Bloods Creek is inhabited by fish. So it would be counted as a stream. And it says, page 14, when is a water course not a stream under the riparian areas regulation? when it does not support fish or drain into a water course that supplies fish. Note, however, that these non-fish water courses may still provide important functions to habitat and other aquatic organisms, food, water, wildlife, and so on. So the key question in determining if a water course is a stream is whether it is connected by surface flow to a stream that provides fish habitat. If so, then it is a stream under the riparian areas regulation. So I just thought I'd bring that up, that while a water course can be a ditch, it's also can be classified as a stream. So, and then we move on to the other one, which is the implementation guidebook, which is referenced in that last guidebook I just read from. And it's got page 3, compliance with the riparian areas regulation does not exempt anyone from complying with other applicable federal or provincial laws, local government bylaws, meaning our zoning bylaw, or related environmental legislation. And then it describes development permit areas. A development permit can supplement requirements under zoning bylaws as long as it does not vary the zoned use or density, which it's not. And
Councilor Savage, if you can, you're at your 3 minutes. And Councilor Proctor, I've got the timing going. So if you can just close, and then I'll open it up to additional speakers.
yeah, so the closing is that I won't be supporting this because all of these provincial regulations I just read give us every right to support our zoning bylaw, the 15-meter setback, and there's nothing wrong with it at all. And
Okay.
so
All right, so Councilor Savage, I'll stop you there. And again, through to the rest of the council, I have a couple of comments, but again, the first time speakers, and then we'll go to the third and final, and then I will be calling the question on this item. Okay. For myself, it's when I look at, well, we've had a bit of correspondence come in on this item. Generally, the public, from what I can assess, is not in favor of, this particular item, and for various reasons, but a lot of it has to do with the removal of, or the potential removal of the trees. And if you look at page 96 of our agenda, it's the graphic or picture that we're under attachment 2, and it clearly shows that green belt along the running parallel to the ENN trail, and ultimately, and then you can see the rest of the cleared lands. And I guess this was probably done soon after the clear cuts throughout the rest of the district. But to me, I kind of going back in my time machine to when we were dealing with this initial subdivision application, and even with the open house and so on, is my understanding is there's going to be that green corridor running through, and essentially there would be the houses on the actual Blood Creek side of the development would, their backyards would run into the protected areas. So it was kind of reassuring at that point that we were going to have remaining green space running parallel to the ENN trail, but also that corridor in addition to the setbacks protecting Bloods Creek. So, taking into consideration the lack of support from the community, I will not be supporting this application, but we'll see where the discussion goes. So additional first-time speakers, and then I will open it up to additional. All right, this will be essentially the final round here. Okay, so any additional speakers on this item? Okay, so Councillor Savage, and you do have 2 minutes, Councillor Savage.
yeah, so I certainly won't be supporting this development variance, and the reason for it is all those regulations. We have every right to go at the 15 meters that will provide more green space. So we have a choice. Do we want more green space? do we want to follow the zoning bylaw or not? Do we want to please residents who I'm quite sure the vast majority will want the extra protection and green space? So there's no downside to this. I'd even be prepared to entertain, well, I'll bring that up in a second, but it's extremely important to have this extra width. These are water courses. Currently, this parkland corridor, that's only about 19 feet on either side of it. So you'll be viewing houses instead of, feeling like you're walking through a forest. And if we go for that extra 25 meters, then or the extra 15 on each side, plus the railway water course is very important. Otherwise, you're walking along the rail trail and you're going to be looking at houses instead of green space. And there's some very nice trees in there as well. Plus it feeds Bloods Creek. There's so many reasons for it. And through chair to staff, if we were to offer a couple more units of density in exchange for the going with this 15-meter setback, what would be the process to do that, please?
Through the mayor to Councillor Savage, it would be a zoning bylaw amendment application.
Well, I would offer that, so if others want to entertain that, but I think this is so important because it connects with this popular asphalt rail trail. And if you enter where it transverses this proposed parkland, if that's a wider parkland, then we could make the entire 15-meter setback as more parkland in exchange for a bit more density. And
Okay, Councillor Savage, I'm going to ask you to wrap that up. You're over your time.
Okay, and may I ask, please, a question to the chair?
Yeah, you may ask a question through the staff if you wish.
Okay, this development permit area or development permit we're discussing not just involves this variance, that's a small piece of it. There's pages and pages of an OCP guidelines, which I would like to speak to see if this development permit is in keeping with them, and there's a number where I feel it's not. So if our discussion is being cut off already on such a huge topic, then I think the community is being shortchanged by a proper discussion on this.
So through to Councillor Savage, really, at this point, it's our council procedure bylaw that speaks to how long an individual can speak to on any one item. So unless there's been an amendment proposed, then that's when the clock restarts on the discussion, but no such thing has occurred, and we're still on the same motion. Therefore, we stick to our speaking times. That is our council procedure bylaw. We've already had a point of order called tonight on adhering to that. And as chair, that's what I have to adhere to, even though in your opinion, I can't remember your exact wording about limited discussion. So anyways, I'll just leave it at that. So if you have a question specifically for staff, then you can ask staff that question. That is fine. That's not, I don't consider that to be debate. If you're just asking for information for how to better understand the application in front of us.
All right, I will make an amendment then, please.
Okay, if you want to propose your amendment, go ahead.
I'll make, I move that the development permit shows the 15-meter setbacks for both water courses referred to in the variance in exchange for a future process whereby 2 more units will be added to the density of the development permit.
Maybe.
I don't know if that's really.
I would think that would be out of order.
Okay, thank you, Director Coates. I was going to just simply make that comment myself. That doesn't sound like an amendment to me, Councillor Savage. Sounds like a different motion altogether.
Fair enough, thank you.
Okay. I saw a couple hands go up with respect to wishing to comment or debate. So Councillor Wilson, go ahead, and I think Councillor Proctor.
I don't really have anything to comment to this point. I actually would like to postpone this motion on the agenda to the next agenda. I would like more time to digest this motion altogether.
Second that.
So I'll just clarify. So Councillor Wilson, you are making that postponement motion? Okay, just clarifying. It's one thing to say I'd like to, but if you wish to, then yes. Okay, so and that's seconded by Councillor Savage. So in terms and through to staff, that's good enough. I believe that would take us to July 7th. I think that's our next council meeting.
Yeah, we understood the motion to be that the motion on the floor be postponed, to postpone the motion on the floor to the July 7th, 2021 council meeting.
Okay, thank you. All right, so discussion's basically limited to time, place, and reason for the postponement. That is fine, but we're not going to be debating per se the actual motion itself that's before us. So is there anything further, Councillor Wilson? And through to Councillor Savage is the seconder to that postponement motion. And for myself, I echo what Councillor Wilson has already indicated. It'd be nice to have a little bit more time to digest this motion. Sometimes with these items, we are limited by our time and with the debate and trying to convey information. And but again, that's our procedural bylaw. And if any member of council feels that it needs updating, then they can bring a motion forward at a future meeting with respect to that. All right, so I'm going to call the question then on the postponement motion. All those in favor? And opposed? Okay, noting that Councillor Gusselbrook is opposed, the postponement carries. All right, that takes us on to item 9C. So we have bylaw number 167, that the second reading of the District of Lantzville Business Bylaw number 167, 2021 be rescinded. And further that, or actually through the staff, we can take these together. Or should we do it separately? What would be the advice? Actually, I'll just make the call on it. We'll just move one at a time. So I've made the motion for it to be rescinded. Do I have a seconder to that? Second by Councillor Proctor. Any discussion? I don't need to discuss it, but through to Councillor Proctor as seconder. Okay. Through to the rest of the council. Okay, hearing nothing, I will call the question. All those in, oh, sorry, Councillor Savage, you wanted to speak to it? This is.
Yes, thanks. I believe that with this includes the section where there's the two-tiered fee system. And I would just really encourage not to do this. I noticed the planning director also commented it could have downsides. And the downsides to me, first of all, it's 50 per year for non-residents, the renewal fee, and 0 per year for Lantzville residents. And Nanaimo does so much for Lantzville. All the employment, all the facilities. We should not be charging the residents anymore for business licenses than what Lantzville pays. I think it just sets a bad precedent. We have far more to lose if they start upping their fees, which are considerably more, and charging us, say, $100 surcharge because we're non-residents, because far more people in Lantzville, I believe, get business licenses for Nanaimo than the other way around. And other than that, though, I just think we should be doing everything we can to set a good tone with Nanaimo. We get so much from them, the benefits are just endless. So I really worry about this. I would rather see it not in, and I'll leave it at that. So I won't be supporting that. And I would really recommend changing it. It's such a small amount of money. It's not worth the tone it's setting. It's really not. Thank you.
Okay.
For clarity for the
Motion
minute
that's on the
taker,
floor.
I just
Pardon
want
me?
to confirm.
Director Coates, I have
Where-
the floor, please. I can't see you and you're interrupting me as a chair. So I'm just reminding Councillor Savage, we are speaking just to the rescinding the bylaw, just so you're aware. We're not speaking to basically giving a second reading as amended. Okay, just make sure. Okay, Director Coates, if you can use your hand just so I don't get interrupted, please. Okay, Director Coates, did you have something to add? If staff can just use their raise hand function,
Do you want to raise hand? I don't have anything to add.
should be down the bottom beside the share screen if you scroll down.
Sorry, no, I
Yeah,
don't
no
have
worries.
anything to add.
Oh, okay, thank you.
I was asking for the record which motion we were on. Thank you.
Yeah, we're just on the rescinding. Okay, so through to council, is there any further comments, debate on rescinding? Second reading. Okay, hearing none, I will call the question. All those in favor? Okay, and opposed? Okay, I believe that's Councillor Wilson's opposed. Is that correct? I just don't know if there's a delay happening or not.
So I guess I'm confused. The second reading, there's two motions on the floor, and we're voting.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Okay, so the first one within this bylaw number 167 is that there's a motion to rescind the District of Lantzville business licensing bylaw. And then there's a motion to give it second reading.
Yeah, so the motion to rescind has been given, it has been moved and seconded, and that's all we're dealing with it right now. And then we'll.
Sorry, yeah, okay, I understand now.
Okay, no worries. I just wanted to check. So I'll call the question again. All those in favor? Okay, and opposed? Noting that Councillor Savage is opposed. A second reading is rescinded. I'll make the motion that District of Lantzville Business License Bylaw number 167, 2021 be given second reading as amended. Do we have a seconder to that? Second by Councillor Gusselbrook. Discussion on this through to Councillor Gusselbrook is seconder if you wish.
Yes, I'm in favor of the second reading. I think this is a long-awaited business licensing bylaw. This was one of our strategic priorities when we were first elected to this council. It's finally coming to fruition. I don't have the same concern about a two-tier licensing, one for Lantzville residents and one for non-residents. The fee for non-residents is minimal. And as Councillor Savage pointed out, it's much less than other jurisdictions. I thought Councillor Savage's concern from previous discussion on this bylaw was lower mainland contractors flooding our market. That hasn't happened. And the foothills is a very good example of local contractors, people who live in Lantzville who are building the houses in the foothills. And I'm confident that that will be the situation once houses start being built on the Clark Med properties. You can say it's a bit, it's like a tariff, a protectionist tariff. But I think to start off, and we can always change the bylaw, but to start off is to give local residents a foot up, a leg up with respect to the fee. I like the bylaw in that there's only a one-time payment. However, there are annual renewals, and that's important that we know who is conducting business in Lantzville, not to restrict anybody, but to know who's here so that we can promote Lantzville businesses, whether they're home-based businesses or occupy commercial or industrial spaces. We're moving ahead. And I think our Economic Development Committee, when it existed, did a lot of work. And I'm really hopeful that we'll see a Lantzville business community with an organization that can act as a lobby group to speak to council when things like development proposals come forward. It's an important voice that we really haven't had as a whole here in this community. So I will be in favor of this second reading. Thank you.
Okay, additional speakers on this item? Just open up to council. Speakers list. Okay, Councillor Savage.
Yes, I mentioned the fees before because that's why we were rescinding the bylaw. Put them in, so I must outsmarted myself. So I spoke at the wrong time. So I won't repeat what I said. And what's that? So anyway, and so I'll stick with what I said about the fees. And Council Gesselbrecht, thank you for the compliment. I'm so pleased to remember the things I said. In this case, it's a little bit of mixing and matching with the things I said. So I didn't mention anything about Lower Mainland contractors. I think they're busy enough in the Lower Mainland. But anyway, thank you for the compliment. So I won't be supporting this. Thank you.
Additional speakers on this item? Just real brief for myself, with respect to the fees, especially the renewal fee, I see it the same way as Councillor Gesselbrecht. It is, it's kind of a freebie to Lantzville residents who operate businesses in the district. So unlike Nanaimo, and no criticism to Nanaimo City or their council, it's just everybody pays every year. So there's no breaks for Nanaimo residents who operate businesses in Nanaimo. They pay the same fee every year. So we're just doing things differently here in Lantzville. And I think this one is, in my opinion, is a good item. I don't think it's going to cost a lot to administer what we're doing here. It's just more or less trying to register the businesses so we know who's operating what and where. And that will feed into our fire department being safer when they're out there performing their job and so forth. So I'm in support of that part. Any additional comments, debate? Okay, hearing none, well, actually, sorry, you can call for additional speakers if, okay, seeing none, I will call the question then. All those in favor and opposed, noting that Councillor Savage is opposed, the motion carries, or second reading carries. All right, oops, what have I done here? Okay, trying to manage my paper. So with respect to next item on our agenda, so we have the under 9C, we have bylaw number 273. So there's a staff report. It's included in the staff report 9C. So this is that, I'll just read the motion, that the District of Lantzville miscellaneous fees and charges bylaw number 26-2004, amendment bylaw number 266/2021 be given first, second, and third readings. Do I have a seconder to that?
Sorry, just before you go with that, there was a corrected version that was sent out. It should read bylaw number 273, not 266.
Okay, so hasn't been seconded yet. So,
Great.
So correcting that, thank you, Director Coates. So 273, that's the bylaw we're referencing. Do we have a seconder to this motion? Second by Councillor Proctor. Discussion. I have nothing to add. Councillor Proctor. Okay, and through to the rest of the council. Okay, hearing none, I will move to calling the question then. All those in favor? And it's carried unanimously. All right, that takes us on to item 10A under unfinished business. We have the Orr Road Beach access. This was referred from June 2nd, 2021, regular council meeting. So we have Councillor Savage's recommendation. So Councillor Savage, if you're prepared to make your motion, go ahead.
That members of council submit to council recommendations for improvements for the Orr Road Beach Road end And once approved, consider funding from either the recreation infrastructure category under the gas tax program or the 2022 budget.
Okay, do we have a seconder to this item? Okay, seconded by Mayor Swain. Discussions or debate. So Councillor Savage, go ahead.
Yes, Councillor Gesselbrack has mentioned a number of times he'd be very much like to improve the Orr Beach Road end. And I made this motion because we should be supporting proposals by other councillors. And the very end of Orr is already blocked off with cement barriers. So we're just talking about the flat area between the beach and the cement traffic barriers. It won't affect any parking at all. There's ample parallel parking now right up both sides of Orr. And there's only one residence on each side of Orr Road, right up to Straight Road. So there's ample parking and minimum disruption to neighbors. And so this is a very simple road end as no parking is affected. And it was also high on my list for improvements as well. So anyway, that's all it is. It's just to look after Council Gesselbrack's wishes, I guess you could say. So that's it. Thank you.
Okay, for myself, I'll just hold off for the moment. But in terms of further debate through the council, any additional speakers on this at this time? Oh, I don't know who got their hand up first. Councillor Gesselbrack, we'll go to you, and then Councillor Wilson. And Councillor Savage, you got you're unmuted at the moment, please.
Yes, thank you. Through the chair to staff, are there plans in the current 5-year plan to do upgrades to Orr Road?
Through you, Your Worship, this is Interim Director Day. At this, I would just have to take a look off the top of my head. I'm not sure. Possibly Director Young knows. I believe there is a budget of $9,500 for road ends, but I don't know if it's specifically for one or it was a grouping of them. So I would just need to look at that and then advise back, unless Director Young knows the answer.
Maybe I can help. I believe Director Spears has indicated that there are plans subject to budgetary restrictions. My concern with Orr Road was that there appears to be an encroachment, a large cedar hedge, as well as the possibility of a culvert being put in on the west side of Orr Road at the beach end, which would allow for more turnaround parking and the ability to turn around. Some of my other concerns are Straight Road, which intersects Orr Road, that I noticed that both properties on the east side of Straight Road have what appears to be the right-of-way blocked off, one with boulders and the other one, I don't know if they're just putting in grass, but there's a lot of ribbon preventing anybody from parking there. So I will deal with staff on that later. I can't support this motion and thank Councillor Savage for remembering me, but I don't think it's the position of councillors to be recommending what improvements need to be done to the road ends. Yes, we have our opinions and we can voice those at budget time. I think we all know that there's some movement to do something to the beach road ends, but I don't think it's for me as a councillor to start recommending what needs to be done. So unfortunately, I won't be able to support this motion.
Okay, so I have Councillor Wilson next, but just I'm just going to go to staff real quick. Director Young, you have your hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm advised by Director Spears that there are no plans to make upgrades to Orr Road in the next 5 years.
Okay, thank you for that. All right, so Councillor Wilson, go ahead.
I just want to, I mean, I appreciate the spirit of this motion, and I definitely would love to see improvements to all beach road ends. But I, as far as myself submitting to council recommendations for improvement or the Orr Road Beach road end, I just don't think that that's something that's that I specialize in, and just wouldn't want to take on the risk of doing that. So it's yeah, it's just something I wouldn't be involved with providing a recommendation. I just don't think it's my place as a councillor to do that.
Okay, and through the rest of the council. Okay, I'll speak to it next then. Yeah, with respect to the motion, submitting recommendations or improvements, that's always a tricky one in itself. Some people that's what they want to do, others don't. I personally am not of that mind. I'm okay with residents providing that input, and during the appropriate times I would provide my input along with residents, and then also deferring it to staff for them to come back with the recommendations on doing that. You know, council can always amend or change the plans as needed, but you know, as far as I'm concerned, it's I don't have a strong desire to submit anything with respect to that. With respect to doing any kind of improvement that has to do with dealing with encroachments, there's a few steps involved in the process. So I'm comfortable with potentially amending this motion. So it's not that council would be doing the recommendations, it'd be staff providing the recommendations. But I think further that we would need an additional motion to deal with the potential encroachment at that road end. And that includes surveying the road or the road end. And then, and if there is such an encroachment, then looking at the, you know, possibility of encroachment agreements. It's no different to what we've done with the village streetscape or the village core improvement. We started off with a survey, as some may recall, and from there we developed a plan. And then from the plan, we had to do some budgetary planning along the way and early on, but then we did further budgetary planning, and here we are now. We're getting very close to having our village core streetscape completed. So again, you know, it does require a few steps, and it's no different to Lavender. We know there was an encroachment down on Lavender at the beach road end, and it's being sorted out in terms of whose property is whose and where the property lines are and so forth. But again, I think that we need to have probably an additional step, or maybe it comes back at another council meeting, or we can do a follow-up motion to this one. But the amendment I will propose is after the word that members of council submit to be struck, and we insert staff provide a report. And that's it. Something like that. So it should read that staff provide a report to council, and it'd be recommendations for improvements for the Orr Road and so on as it stands. So do I have a seconder to the amendment? So seconded by Councillor Savage. You almost had that one, Councillor Wilson. I think you were just a hair behind. So I've kind of already spoke to it. So to the seconder, if you wish to speak to it, and then I'll open the floor to the rest of council with respect to the amendment.
No, I think that would be good. I'll certainly support that. So at least we can see what some of our options are. As I say, it's very minor things needed there to make it more comfortable. So I'll support that. Thank you.
Okay, and additional speakers on this item? For myself, I've already spoke to it a little bit. This is something that keeps coming up about encroachment at, Orr Road, and now that it's been repeated a few times over a few meetings, my concern is that, what is this council actually doing about it? We've made it publicly known there's a potential encroachment, and then we're just going to let it sit. So I feel that we need to move forward on this. It's something we're going to have to do at some point anyways. And part of our planning down the road, we may decide maybe it's this year, maybe it's next year, maybe it's in 5 years that it gets tackled. But we got to start the process sometime, and why not start it now? That's the way I look at it. So I don't think it's going to be a very onerous process. We're not asking for a high level design. We're just asking for staff to provide some recommendations for them, for potential parking improvements for that road end. Okay, Councillor Gusselbrick.
Yeah, I want to make it clear that, councillors don't go around targeting individuals to pick on them because they live down at the beach ends. Rather, there's been a history in Lantzville of letting things go and not taking care of things. And encroachments are they're a problem. And it's not that the party who may be encroaching is doing it willingly. It just may never have been brought to their attention before. So I agree with the mayor when he says that, we have to take steps. I saw today district staff out there with their hedge clippers, clipping the bushes back at a corner where the sight lines were really bad. You couldn't see around, and there's potential for accidents. In fact, there had been accidents, and staff acted with alacrity. The ground crew was out there doing their job, and it's a safety issue. So I just want to make it clear that I agree with the mayor, and that if individuals who may have potential encroachments don't take offense, get involved in the process. Talk with staff. If there's a problem, if there's some sort of hardship in doing it right away, or there's some other reason that staff doesn't know about, contact staff, call the district. We want to cooperate here in Lantzville and move ahead. Thank you.
Yeah, and just as a follow-up to Councillor Gusselbrick's comments, is like the targeting of property owners. It's anything but from that. But that. It's, I look at Lantzville Road, for instance, and we, encroachment agreements were sent out to basically everybody on Lantzville Road, from Wiles Road or the St. Philip's Church there, all the way down to Huddlestone. And so there's a lot of encroachments, and as a council, as a district, we have dealt with that, and we are slowly but surely dealing with other ones, and even into the parking lot at Seaview Elementary, the encroachments along the back there, we've dealt with that. So it's maybe not fun if you are one of those property owners, and all of a sudden it's like, oh geez, now don't get to use that land anymore, and I'm sure it's not fun to move things around and potentially relocate plants or whatever it might be. But at the end of the day, we have to look out for the entire municipality, and even with this road end, it's what we're really looking out for is providing access for all residents to the beach, and it's that simple. It's providing the greatest, or the greater populace of our town, access to the beach. So anything we can do to facilitate that, we should be doing it, in my opinion. All right, so unless there's any further information or debate, I will be calling a question, and this is on the amendment. So seeing none, all those in favor and opposed, and it looks like carried unanimously, and that takes us back to the main motion as amended. Any further discussion? Okay, hearing none, I will call the question. All those in favor, and that's carried unanimously. Yeah. At this point, are there any follow-up motions that council would like to entertain or make? not to be like doing a George Cup first heard deferred kind of thing, but just any follow-up motions. Okay, so, I did make comment earlier about, possible encroachment and so on. I think it's probably better just to, I'll likely bring a motion back to our next council meeting that will deal with that. So we'll just leave it at that for now. So next item is under 10B. So we have the BC Energy Step Code. This is under, this was referred, from the June 2nd, 2021 regular council meeting. And Councillor Savage, you have a recommendation there. So if you would want to make your motion.
Thank you. That building bylaw number 182/2020 be amended such that the required levels of the BC Energy Step Code and the dates they become mandatory match those in the city of Nanaimo's building bylaw.
Okay, do we have a seconder to that? Okay, Mayor Swain is seconding. So through to Councillor Savage.
Yes, thank you. This goes back to when we passed the building bylaw. I mentioned that throughout the process of the amenities and the OCP amendments there, I brought up each time the idea of the green technology in building, and the Energy Step Code is the way to do that. So we passed the building bylaw, and I did that stating at the time that because it was in a hurry to be done, that I would propose an amendment to work Energy Step into the building bylaw. So the idea is Nanaimo's already got targets for step 2 and 3. So that's all we're doing is matching their targets. And so many builders from Nanaimo, contractors, everyone from plumbers to floor layers to window installers do business in Lantzville with the development going on. So it just makes sense. They're already used to doing the step code levels in Nanaimo. It just makes sense that Lantzville would have the same. There's no point having lower standards. And the whole idea of these, and it was the same in the OCP, there's a whole section on green buildings and right up to passive house level technology. So it's definitely in there. And the whole idea of it, it's an aspect of affordable housing. So that when you move in, new home buyers, your energy bills, your monthly payments will be much lower. And they can be vastly reduced when you start getting up to energy level 5. But all we're doing now is matching Nanaimo's energy step level 2 and 3. So that's the idea. You reduce the cost for it. And it's also pride in our community that at least we're as advanced as Nanaimo in building standards. It just makes sense to get a leg up on it in advance. And that's basically it. And then also in the council priorities, in December 2019, it stated 3.3, ensure new development considers innovation, green technology, unique architecture, trend setting, BC Energy Step Code, establish appropriate policy and regulatory mechanisms to ensure that new development considers these objectives. So it was in the our priorities list. I think it got rolled into a broader character category. But anyway, that's the idea. It's not, there's really not much downside to it. You're not asking builders to do much more. They're already used to doing it in Nanaimo. So that's all this is doing. We're putting the energy step code targets to match those of Nanaimo. And that's it. It's a very simple request. Thank you.
Okay, additional speakers. I'll go so through to Councillor Proctor. Go ahead.
Thank you. Through you to staff, I'm wondering, Director Young, what is your recommendation about this? Is my recollection is that this is now the 3rd time that this has been brought forward to us. And we discussed it at length during strategic priorities and decided not to make it a strategic priority. But I'm wondering if you could outline to us how you feel about Lantzville taking this direction.
Yeah, through the mayor to Councillor Proctor. What I can advise is that staff reached out to the provincial ministry that's responsible for this, and we're advised that by December 2022, step 3 will be mandatory for all local governments for Part 9 residential buildings. By December 2027, step 4 will be mandatory, and by 2032, step 5 will be mandatory. We've discussed this internally at the staff level. Our advice is to stick with the provincial timelines. We know that that's the approach taken by the city of Parksville. We haven't heard that the town of Qualicum Beach is opting into higher steps of the step code that are different than the provincial timetable. The RDN has also not advised that they will be opting into higher steps than the mandatory steps that will be instituted in the upcoming years, regardless of what the District of Lantzville does. All local governments across the region will be doing something that's a little bit different. But again, the staff recommendation is to stick with the provincial timeline. If we're trying to match the city of Nanaimo's, I'm not sure that it really makes a lot of sense to go to step 2, given where we are right now. If we were to go to a higher step, it would be step 3, just simply because there likely isn't enough time for builders to adjust to an interim step before it becomes mandatory, before step 3 becomes mandatory in December of 2022.
Thank you.
Councillor Proctor, any follow-ups?
Yes, thank you. I'm wondering if, in your opinion, Director Young, does it cost more to build a house following step 3 than it would if you weren't?
Yes.
So it doesn't save the homeowner money, it actually costs them more money to build a house this way?
Well, yeah, there are higher upfront costs to achieve that higher efficiency. And just for reference, Part 3 is 20% better energy efficiency than the base requirements under the building code. So yeah, absolutely, there are higher upfront costs. But as Councillor Savage alluded to, the idea is that in the long term, homeowners are saving money because they're reducing costs associated with energy consumption.
I've reduced my energy consumption by 20%, and I did save money and I was proud to do it, but it's not tons of money. So it would take a number of years, depending on what your energy bill is, to recoup the money. I am inclined to follow staff's recommendation just as we have the last 2 times that this came up. I think that following the provincial regulations and staying in step with the majority of communities in BC is a wise thing to do. Homeowners can choose to upgrade their energy efficiency as they see that they can afford. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Gusselbrock, and then I'm gonna briefly speak.
Yes, I think, like Councillor Proctor, I'll stay the course here with the staff's recommendation. I understand where Councillor Savage is coming from. The province is heading that way anyway. I think Nanaimo Council will be jubilant to know that Councillor Savage has stated on the record that he wants to be like Nanaimo. That must be a first. But I think at this point, affordability, talking about affordability and raising the step code, they're contradictory at this point. It's right now, it's a lot of money to build. I think Councillor Savage may be delighted to know that from what I see in the foothills on Spence's Way, most of the builders have incorporated step 2. into their designs. Electric vehicle plug-ins, type of windows. So, you know, it is happening. Builders talk, builders go to builders conventions. They look at the cost, they look at materials. So I think we can be confident to know that we are getting there. Thank you.
Additional speakers on this item? Sorry, I was going to speak and then I will go to a second round. So through to Director Young, my question is, or has to do with like, what would be the process anyways for us to achieve that goal essentially of moving to step 3 by December 2022? There must be steps that we'll have to take along the way. And it's not that far off in a lot of ways.
Yeah, well, to you, Mr. Mayor, there isn't really anything that we do need to do. So we only need to make some amendments to our building bylaw if we want to opt into a higher step of the step code earlier than the provincial mandated timelines. If we get to December 2022 and we haven't made any changes to our bylaw, step 3 still applies and we're required to administer it. If we want to provide absolute clarity for staff, for the public, for council, then what we could do is we could do an amendment to our building bylaw and match the timelines that have been given to us by the province. So it'll essentially match the step 3, 4, and 5 when those become mandatory in 2022, 2027, and 2032. It again doesn't really mean anything. It just provides a little more clarity in our bylaw.
Okay, thank you. All right, I'll speak again in a moment, but go ahead, Councillor Savage.
Yes, thank you. Yes, I'm aware as well that I was told the provincial government, they're targeting being mandatory step 3 in 2022. But if they're not, then we're just getting further and further behind. There's 74 of 165 municipalities who are proactively involved in this energy step program in one way or another. So just out of pride, I'm astonished that Lantzville wouldn't be right at the forefront with all this building we're having. And the more that gets built to not these higher standards, then we've missed the opportunity. And as I say, it's right in the OCP. We should be following the OCP in that regard. And there's just so many step 3, step 4s. There's also bonus density, and even in Nanaimo and other municipalities where if you go for rezoning to increase density, you have to go up to much higher step codes. So that's my worry, is if this provincial doesn't come in, then we're even further behind. And the whole idea of the step code is you start with 2, get used to it. Builders are trained and used to it, then you go to step 3. If you just go from nothing up to the higher steps, it's not as smooth, and you're missing out on all the houses built in the meantime that are the lower standard with the high energy bills. So I'll certainly be supporting this. I think we should. Thank you.
Okay, additional speakers? Okay, again, I'll speak to this. You know, I always come back, or try to come back to, you know, why do this? You know, what's really the point? And it is not meant to penalize builders and new homeowners or buyers and people entering the market. Really, if you go on, you know, the BC Gov site and you look at it, it says, you know, the province has committed to taking incremental steps to increase energy efficient requirements in the building code and to make buildings net zero energy ready by 2032, in line with Clean BC's goals. You know, ultimately, what's the Clean BC's goal? So it's reducing pollution, reducing greenhouse gases. And that's going to cost everybody money. Taxes and various forms, you know, we pay now. Ultimately, you know, it's to going towards reducing greenhouse gases pollution. That's what we're talking about. That's that's why other municipalities are taking their various steps towards increasing the code or level that they're going to. So my question really is why aren't we trying to, at least for 2022, at least January to December before level 3 rolls in, why not move to step 2? So do an incremental increase in the steps. If it's not an onerous task, why not request it that, and it gives builders time. So between now and January to get ready, because in Lantzville, we're going to move to step 2 for all of 2022. And then once December, hits, then we'll be transitioning to level 3. And we should have a plan to transition up the scale, because ultimately it's about our future. It's about pollution, environment. I think it's the right thing to do. And yeah, it's going to take away from some affordability and so forth. But, on the flip side of that, and from my understanding, and there's usually grant or not grant programs, but rebate programs that are out there to help offset some of those costs. And they're not everywhere for everything, but, there are things that help it along. And that's even with an existing home. If you go from an oil furnace to a gas furnace, well, you get a rebate. There's usually a rebate program going on. So, again, I think it's about the future. It's about, why are we doing this? It's to have a greener, cleaner planet. So I'll be supporting the motion. We're moving in that direction anyways. Why not move to step 2 for 1 year and then move to step 3 and when it needs to go to that point anyways? Additional speakers on this item? Okay, Councillor Savage.
Yes, thank you. I would just address this price issue. I was down in Victoria and visited some of the houses that Bernard Contracting did, and he builds passive houses down there. He's got a number of them built. And I also phoned him and talked with him, and he said he can bring it in as low as a 1% increase in the house cost if you're talking just a plain house, no bells and whistles, and that's step 5. So the cost needn't be onerous. There's some very simple things you can do, like having the air exchange go through the ground, which at 6 feet down is a constant 55 degrees Fahrenheit. It naturally warms the air up before it enters the house. There's all sorts of simple things one can do. So I would agree. It's good to have a start, and we got to start somewhere. And this can be our backup plan in case the province does not bring it in 2022. Then we're way behind. So I think we should start. And but as I say, the costs needn't be onerous. They're really bringing the cost down. I've talked to a guy doing it. So anyway, I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Okay, unless there's any additional information, new information, debate, I will call the question. All right, so I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? And opposed? We have Councillor Gusselbert, Councillor Wilson, and Councillor Proctor opposed. The motion fails. Okay, that takes us on to 11 in our agenda, which is Committee Commission recommendations. So on June 8th, the Community Safety Committee Standing Committee meeting produced some recommendations. We'll do them independently. I believe they all had unanimous. This is an interesting one. I was kind of thinking about the agenda and thought, well, maybe this should have been under the consent agenda because I believe they received unanimous support of the committee. But anyways, we'll take them separately. So the first one, and I'll just make the motion that staff provide recommendations for crosswalk options at Clark Drive and Alds Road, including cost estimates and funding options for council's consideration. That was a recommendation. So we have a second by Councillor Savage. Discussion. Spoke to this at the committee level. Again, as I already stated, I believe it received unanimous support of the committee, which is basically council. We'll move to the seconder. Any comments or debate from the seconder? That's you, Councillor Savage. No, okay, didn't see anything. And through to the rest of council. Any comments, debate? Okay, seeing none, I will call the question. All those in favor? Okay, that's carried unanimously. Next round as that staff update the traffic and parking regulations bylaw number 2004, truck routes for vehicles exceeding 13,500 kilograms for council's consideration. Seconder to that, second by Councillor Gusselbrock. Discussion on this one. Okay, and this is essentially to deal with construction traffic and for the bit larger trucks and also looking at other vehicular routes for construction companies and so forth. All right, Councillor Savage, go ahead. Or sorry, to the seconder, Councillor Gusselbrock, is there anything? Okay, Councillor Savage, go ahead.
Thank you. Yes, at the safety committee meeting, which I thought was great, by the way, excellent progress on road safety. I'm really looking forward to safer roads, slower traffic. And at the meeting, Director Spears said, with respect to this motion, that yes, he would include all construction traffic going to Clark Med and the foothills in this traffic and parking regulations bylaw. Regards following the highway to Ware Road traffic route. This isn't captured in the motion, so through chair to staff, I just wanted to make sure that this was the understanding. Thank you.
Your worship, Director Spears isn't available for comment.
Thank you, CEO Campbell. And that was my recollection as well as, and during the safety committee meeting, basically, from what I recall, staff had indicated, or Director Spears that indicated that was enough direction in the motion to produce a report. So.
Yeah, that's good. Thank you. I agree.
Okay. Any additional debate, comments, questions with respect to this motion? Okay, seeing none, I will call the question. All those in favor? Okay, carried unanimously. It takes us on to the third one, so that the District of Lantzville write to the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure requesting permanent speed reader signs for both south and northbound traffic directions on the Island Highway at Ware Road intersection. Is there a seconder to that one? So second by Councillor Savage. Discussion on this one. I'll just comment briefly. So part of that safety committee meeting is the RCMP were in attendance. I don't know if the video is posted online yet, but anyways, they were in attendance and they spoke to traffic enforcement. And during that meeting, we were made aware that they have taken some of the police resourcing and have allocated one full-time RCMP officer to traffic, and that would be between Lantzville and Cedar, but not all in between in Nanaimo. But for Lantzville and Cedar, we would have one full-time traffic enforcement officer to deal with the increasing number of traffic complaints and to gather information, research, and implement solutions, including ticketing. So that was part of the discussion, and also having that increased presence. But what kind of spawned out of that was, looking at, is there a way of making people or alerting people to, where they're, the speed they should be traveling at and so forth. During that meeting, it was brought to at least my attention, I think maybe to others as well. There are a number of these signs around. There's the ones coming into the Noose and down at the Petrocan gas station and telling you to slow down. And there's other ones out by Cedar and Nanaimo Lake, or the Nanaimo River in Cedar on the highway there. So they are around, and I think it would be definitely one of these worthwhile requests, because anything we can do to try and get people to slow down, especially at that area, because it's just the way the traffic funnels through there and how people use it as a takeoff launching pad to move up island. So anyways, that's my 2 cents on it. I'll be supporting the motion as I did in the committee. So through to the seconder, that was Councillor Savage, and then to the rest of the council. Okay, any additional comments for council? Councillor Gusselbrook.
Yeah, I've got a little more than 2 cents. No, I'm pissed off. Just yesterday, coming from the Mary Ellen stop, that's the last stop. It's 80 kilometers an hour from there to Ware Road. How many bodies do we have to pull out of wreckage at Ware Road and the Island Highway? 80 kilometers an hour. I was getting jammed by guys and women, 120, 130, and the far right lane is the Bonneville Salt Flats, 140. So that for us who live in Upper Lantzville, coming from, let's say, Woodgrove or that area, it's almost impossible to merge to get over to the left-hand turn. So I give up. I turn down Ware Road, do a U-turn, and wait for a green light. And when the light does turn green, I count to 3 to see who's going to blow past coming up or down the highway. I don't want to get killed. I don't think anybody else does. So we need more RCMP presence, putting the full weight of the law, putting the hammer down on people who are just reckless. That's all, the only thing I can describe it, reckless for my life and anybody else. So I'm hoping that we can get those signs. At least it's another indication, but we really need RCMP presence. It's a great fishing hole. And if you're doing 120, 130 and an 80, you deserve to have a big fine. Maybe if it's your second or third time, you could park the car and get an e-bike. There, that was a full 10 cents worth. Thank you.
Yeah. You know, fair comments. It's, and that's part of one of the reasons why the safety committee came about is I know for myself during the last election and campaigning, that was in the top 3. It's just the speeders, you know, in our town, through our town. It's a problem, and we have heard from numerous residents from all over Lantzville about their concerns, and I felt very reassured during that meeting, and because it was new news to me in that meeting that the RCMP have made that decision to now allocate some resources. Up to this point, we were being responded to on an as complaints basis. Now we have something moving in a positive direction. Now where we're actually going to have designated resourcing, and who knows where that's going to go. They may dial it up or dial it down. It just depends on what their findings are, and they'll be reporting back to the safety committee, I believe in September, to update us and share with us what their findings are. But again, it's a problem, and I don't know why. I've heard some people wish that that section of the highway would go down to 70 and have it go 70 all the way to basically the Sanawa's gas station. So it's a problem. And just the way that, how many lanes is that? 8 lanes across or something crazy like that where it goes from Alds to Ware in that section. It's just too much, and to navigate it can be tricky. And to your comment, Councillor Gusselbrook, about counting to 3. Well, I count to 3 for sure. And then I look both ways at least twice. And, you shouldn't have to do that at an intersection, but that one, I've heard numerous testimonials, and you read about them as well, that the people just blow through. So you do need to look, it almost needs to be a public service announcement that you look 2 or 3 times before you go through some of these intersections in Lantzville. Okay, so Councillor Gusselbrook, and then
I just want to get the recollection clear that Inspector Fletcher mentioned that people who have complaints, and I think it was about traffic, but other things, send a letter. Send a letter. If you send it to the district or the council members, Inspector Fletcher said, send it on to the RCMP. And I think staff has commented, has confirmed that they will send the letters on to the RCMP, because then they see where the problems are. So like anything else, send a letter, it's in writing, they have to respond to it. And I think that's a great idea. So we have a lot of good letter writers in Lantzville. So You know, if traffic and or other problems that the RCMP can deal with is on your plate, send a letter. Thanks.
Councillor Savage, and then I'm inclined to call this question as we got other stuff to get through.
Yes, when I was a wee boy, a kid, there was this guy called Nature Boy, and he would wear a Tarzan outfit with a flowing beard, long hair, and so on. And he'd stand out on the highway with his sign, and he was a real fixture. And he'd protest anything to do with pollution. So, Councillor Gesselbrecht, there's no need to just feel highly displeased over the intersection. You can do something about it. So get your outfit on, get your sign 80 or bust, and stand up there. See what you can do. Okay?
I'll be worried, Councillor Savage, if I see you growing a beard.
All right, so moving to calling the question. All those in favor? Okay, that's carried unanimously. That takes us on to item 12 of our agenda. So we have Mayor and
And sorry, as a point of privilege, please.
Yes, go ahead, Councillor.
That's just as a follow-up to our safety committee meeting motions. We'd also mentioned at that meeting, there appeared to be consensus to print out some of the data occasionally on our speed sign. Like say, just pick one day at each location and put out the number of cars and the speeds. Is that something that would need a motion, or it's just to be followed up at staff level, or?
Through to staff and
Your worship,
your Spears, but yeah, C.O. Campbell, if maybe you can just comment about providing that information.
yes, your worship, we would need a motion from council as it does. I have talked to Director Spears about this. It's a fair amount of work to download that information. So if council would like us to do that, we need a motion from council to have that done.
Yeah, let's discuss that at the next safety committee meeting and get the lowdown on doing it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So that moves us to item 12A, so Mayor and Council verbal updates. So I'll start with Councillor Wilson this evening. So Councillor Wilson.
Nothing to report.
Councillor Proctor.
I don't have anything to report this meeting.
Okay, and Councillor Gesselbrecht.
All you dads have a great day on Sunday.
Okay, and through to Councillor Savage.
I have three pieces of good news. This Saturday, the Legion is hosting a food drive for loaves and fishes. The hours are 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. Donations plus food are welcomed. Also, we had our first safety committee meeting, which we touched on some of the things, but as I say, I'm really looking forward to addressing some of these hazard roads in Lantzville, Dickinson, Superior, Olds, Lantzville Road, as well as another number of other spots we've heard from residents. So that's good news. And the third is, with the weather warming up, we'll soon be able to start swimming at our favorite spots scattered throughout the whole mid-island. And we're very lucky to have so many swimming holes, beaches for the ocean, and nearby lakes. So those are my updates. Thank you.
And for myself, I was going to comment on. So I do have at least a couple things. First one is just with respect to broom busters. All the council received an email just outlining their report for 2021. I was quite impressed when I was reading the report, and ultimately they put in a lot of hours, a lot of volunteer hours, and total hours were 323 for this year. They had one individual person, it looks like, did 160 hours, if I read the report correctly, just on their own. And then they also had a group from Aspen Grove. They did it, and they had, actually, before I go on to the Aspen Grove, for the rest of the volunteers, there was 23 of them, but then there was a separate broom buster group through the Aspen Grove, and they basically have 30 volunteers themselves, and they log over 150 hours of broom busting, clearing. And the reason why I bring this up this evening is, when we do our land acknowledgements at the beginning of every meeting, it's one thing just to say it, but there's another aspect to it, and it's part of the reasons why we do this is to show that we what it means to us. And part of that is why I bring up the broom busting, is that we're trying to be good stewards of the land. We're trying to look after the land that we all live on and recreate on and meet on. So, and prior to that, in the community, we had a beach cleanup. So again, the reason why I bring that up is again, we're trying to be good stewards of the land that we're so grateful to be on. So other than that, in terms of the safety committee, the one thing is kind of being brought up is communication. So it's really important for community members, residents to write us if there are concerns, because those concerns will funnel through into the safety committee, and from there we can look at having good fulsome discussions about what we as a council can to try and do to mediate or remedy some of these problems. So it goes along the same lines as if you have concerns about speeding and so forth, or you got passed on Lantzville Road by a vehicle, phone in that complaint. If there's other sightline issues that you can't quite see when you're trying to navigate through or make a turn or what have you, contact the district, send your letters in and so forth. We need to have the information so we can deal with safety concerns and issues in the district of Lantzville, and also extends to other things, relating to crime as well. So there's no, or even fire stuff. That's why we have the RCMP involved and the Lantzville Fire Department's involved. It's to look at all aspects about community safety. So again, keep the letters coming, and we can try and address the concerns on an expedient fashion. So those are my updates, and oops, just gonna get back to my agenda. There's that. Okay, so that takes us on to item 12B. So we have the mini rescue pumper 300 imperial gallon custom fire apparatus. So there's a motion in the agenda. Is someone prepared to make that motion? Okay, Councillor Savage, if you can read that, please.
That council amend the 2020 financial plan to include the purchase of a fire department mini rescue pumper in the amount of $382,000 with 100% funding from debt, and further that the council of the District of Lantzville authorizes up to $382,000 be borrowed under section 175 of the community charter from the Municipal Finance Authority for the purpose of purchasing a mini rescue pumper for the Lantzville Fire Department. And further, that the loan be repaid within 5 years with no rights of renewal.
Okay, do we have a seconder to that motion? Seconded by Councillor Proctor. Discussion on the motion. So through to you, Councillor Savage.
Yes, thank you. Just to summarize what we're doing here, the idea is to get the truck now as it is needed. And because our capital reserves for this were a little low, we decided to take a loan for just some of the cost. So we didn't have to raise taxes during these tough COVID times. So that's basically what we're doing here. Fully support it. Thank you.
And through the seconder, Councillor Proctor. Okay, and through the rest of the council, I had a comment and possibly a question through the staff. So unless others want to speak, I will go for it. Okay, through to staff. In terms of the borrowing, is there any other options in terms of financing this? Can we not look at borrowing from internal reserves?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor. It's Interim Director Day.
Yes.
We could, yes, borrow from the fire hall life cycle reserve. and pay it back to that over a 5-year period or sooner if circumstances allowed.
And in terms of doing that, is there an advantage to doing, we're not going to rebuild anything in the immediate future, but in terms of borrowing costs, would that be a cheaper option for the municipality to borrow internally versus going through MFA?
Well, at this time, the cost of borrowing is less than what we're earning on our savings account. However, that is changing, or most likely that will change over 5 years. And the equipment financing that is offered through the Municipal Finance Authority is based on a fluctuating interest rate. So it is not set at a set rate for the full 5 years. So the interest could change and be higher than what we could charge ourselves.
Yeah. Anyways, the reason I bring this up, it's something for council to contemplate. Where we get the money, we can get it either place. It's just what's going to cost us more or less. So I'll move it on to additional speakers if anybody wishes to speak to this. Councillor Gusselbrock.
Through you to staff, maybe staff could tell us why this proposal is put forward rather than some other option.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Basically, this proposal is how it was presented in the 22 budget, is that the money for the purchase of this unit in the 2022 budget was to be done with borrowing. So that's why I put forward this recommendation, is to follow what the plan was in the financial plan.
So supplement is, if we take it from the fire hall, I forget the terms you use, but basically fire hall rebuilding fund, and we had to build a fire hall, which we know we will at some point, we won't have that money in that fund. Is that correct?
It would not, yeah, it would be 5 years before it would be paid back. But if I could make a recommendation, if we're going to borrow internally, there is the 300,000 currently in the fire department vehicle reserve fund. And so we could expend the whole 3,000 from the fire department vehicle reserve fund and borrow the additional 82,000 from the fire hall life cycle reserve fund. And then the fire hall reserve fund could be paid back in 2 years. The reason, if we go ahead with that, the fire department equipment reserve fund would have basically a zero balance for the next 5 years, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but the engine number 1 will be at 25 years life in 2028. And so at that time, it will be necessary to replace engine 1, which will cost between $800,000 to $1 million. So at that time, the full borrowing would have to be done for that unit. And to borrow $1 million, I'm presuming, but council may want to do a longer than a 5-year term to borrow $1 million, because for 5 years, the annual payments would be approximately $220,000 per year, which would be equivalent to today's tax increase of 10%. So that's quite a large amount to pay over 5 years. Of course, you can extend it longer than 5 years. You can do 10 years or 15 maybe. I wouldn't recommend it. But then council would have to have public approval or elector approval for that bylaw. So it's just a little more complicated and a little more expensive to borrow for the engine 1 at $1 million rather than, or easier to borrow the 300,000 now, because it can be done over the 5 years at not an extravagant cost to the public. So we can pay for it all up front out of reserves, and probably have to borrow $1 million in 2028 is the end result. But it can be done.
Any follow-ups, Councillor Gusselbrook? I got Councillor Wilson wanting to speak.
I most likely won't be around in 2028, but my kids will. So my preference is let's borrow the money now while we're all sitting at the table and we're responsible for it and get it done. But I'll wait to hear what the councillors have to say.
Okay, go ahead, Councillor Wilson.
If what I read here is correct, I mean, we're looking at 1% per annum. That's cheaper than what, how fast money is being deflated. So we, with all the money that's been inputted into the market over the last couple of years, so I'd be more, I would support more of the just taking out the loan at 1%. That's a really good interest rate. That's all.
Okay. Additional debate, comments, and I'm going to move to calling the question. So, Councillor Savage, go ahead.
Just out of interest, please, through chair to staff, what are the comparative interest rates? What are we getting on the investment roughly now in return for?
Currently, the district is earning 1% on the savings account that it has. And so that would be the rate we charge ourselves if we borrowed internally for the money. And the rate for currently with the Municipal Finance Authority, sorry, it's slipping my mind. I'm just looking for it. So the rate for June, as I said, it fluctuates monthly. The rate for June was 9.94%.
Holy cow, very nice. Yes, I would go with the with what we're planning on doing with the loan. And because as Councillor Wilson says, we'll be paying back the same amount of money with deflated dollars, and the dollars will become more deflated every year. I believe we're heading for some inflation. So I think we're looking good in that respect. I would just stick to how we're borrowing it now. Thank you.
Okay. All right, so I'm going to move to calling the question then. So, where did my sheet go? Oh, there we are. Yeah, so I'm going to move to calling the question. So all those in favor? Okay, carried unanimously. So we have a follow-up to that one. I'll just make the motion that council approve the purchase of a mini rescue pumper from Rocky Mountain Phoenix in the amount of $382,100. So that's second by Councillor Proctor. Any discussion on that? Okay, hearing none, move to calling the question. All those in favor? Okay, that is carried, or and opposed? So none opposed? Okay, so it's carried unanimously. All right, takes us on to 12C. So we have a request for conference call meetings with the Premier and the provincial ministers since December 2021. So there's a number of them that are listed there. So I'm not going to read through them. But is there really at this point, is there any amendments to be proposed? So if you look at the bottom under the fourth bullet, just says insert topics. I don't know if council came with any suggested amendments or additions to this list. Okay, and through to staff, with the third bullet, do we need to have that? Just Director Coates?
Yes, I have my hand up.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you.
No, the updated agenda that was sent out removed the third bullet because we were advised that that was failed, that grant application. Yeah. So. Okay,
yeah, I'm looking at, I guess, the printed one that was in my mailbox, so not the updated one online. So I'm assuming that everybody in there, possibly they're looking at is basically the two which is to the Minister of Municipal Affairs for the Clark Drive water system expansion. And then the second one had to do with the same thing to the Minister of Municipal Affairs for the Winds residential area expansion for water. So those are the two, no additions, deletions. Okay, I'm gonna, Director Coates, your hand's still up. Did you have anything further to add? Okay.
No, it's a two-part show here. My partner just took it down. Thanks.
Okay, no worries. So I'm gonna move to calling the question then. So all those in favor and opposed, that's carried unanimously. Okay, so we have introductions, introduction of late items. I have a late item I'd like to introduce this evening. So I'm going to go to share screen. Oh, where the heck is it now? Oh. Oh, why is that not doing that? Okay. Oh, I see. All right, so I've got the motion up on the share screen. So what we'd be voting on is whether or not to deal with this motion this evening. So I'll just read it, and staff, they can view it and record it. So that staff forward the District of Lantzville Good Neighbor Bylaw number 200, 2021 as amended and given third reading on June 14th, 2021 to Sanawa's Chief and Counsel for review, and further that any comments be forwarded to the District of Lantzville staff by 1 p.m. June 29th, 2021. So that's the late item I'd like to introduce. So basically we would just simply be voting on whether or not to accept that as a late item as part of our agenda. Oops, what's going on here? Through to Director Coates, you have your hand up.
Okay, now I'm unmuted. Yes, I was just seeking clarity that the first motion would be that council approves the addition of a late item for tonight's meeting to consider a motion to refer a bylaw to the Nanos First Nation Council.
That's
And
correct.
then-
Yeah, so we're just going to be considering.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. All right, so through to council, I will move to calling the question then. All those in favor? And actually, I can't see my whole screen. Just give me a sec here. What's going on? Oh, there we go. Okay, I just stopped sharing, so I'm sorry it's gone. Hopefully everybody got that. So I'll call the question again. This is just to consider as a late item. All those in favor? I couldn't see everybody's hands, so okay. And opposed? Okay, that's carried unanimously then. So now we're on to our late item. And again, the motion, I'll read it again. So that staff forward the District of Lantzville Good Neighbor Bylaw number 200, 2021 as amended and given third reading on June 14th, 2021 to Sanawa's Chief and Counsel for review, and further that any comments be forwarded to the District of Lantzville staff by 1 p.m. June 29th, 2021. All right, so that's that. Councillor Gesselbrecht. I'll add you to speakers list. I'm just going to speak to it briefly. So all the council should have been privy to the correspondence we've had over the last day, and with respect to sharing our bylaw and for review with Chief and Counsel of News First Nation. And that's why I'm bringing this this late item. I believe it's of an emergent nature, and I feel that it's would be appropriate that they have the opportunity to review the bylaw, and if there's any concerns or that council should be considering, they can bring those forward to us by the time and date that is in the motion itself. Sorry, I'm just, did we get it moved and seconded? Okay, yeah, that's correct, yeah. Oh, were you seconding, Councillor Gesselbrecht? Is that, okay, my mistake, I just jumped right into it. So that was seconded by Councillor Gesselbrecht. For additional comment, debate, Councillor Gesselbrecht is the seconder. And through to the rest of the council. Okay, hearing none, I'm going to move to then calling the question. All those in favor? Okay, that's carried unanimously. Thank you for that. And next is notices of motion. Any notices of motion? Okay, go ahead, Councillor Savage.
Whereas both the Foothills OCP map and the Foothills Covenant map show a parkland buffer adjacent to some Phantom Road properties, be it resolved that the newly created rock slope of the Harwood Road extension in the Foothills be covered with overburden organic material for eventual greening up, and a length of sound fencing be erected in order to substitute for some of the lost parkland buffer for the benefit of wildlife and the adjacent residents on Phantom Road. And as a point of order, please.
Okay, if you want to state your point of order, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. This is just a procedural matter I'm bringing up, but in our procedure bylaw, we do have the option of dealing with a notice of motion on the spot with a majority vote of council. And I mention that because I know this resident on Phantom Road has talked to other council members, and it's a bit timely to do this while the road is in its rudimentary form right now, to just basically dump organic matter and that's already available on the property down the bank is all it entails. So I would welcome that if anyone else that's talked to this fellow would be interested in dealing with it now.
And Director, I just see Director Coates' hand is up. I'm just checking in with her first, and then we'll come back to your request, Councillor Savage. So Director Coates?
Yes, I would need the motion repeated, please.
Yes.
Slowly.
I'll just give you that part. That the newly created rock slope of the Harwood Road extension in the Foothills be covered with overburden organic material for eventual greening up and a length of sound fencing be erected in order to substitute for some of the lost parkland buffer. For the benefit of wildlife and the adjacent residents on Phantom Road.
One more time, thanks.
Whereas both the Foothills,
Oh, sorry, I didn't put anything about the whereas. I've started
Yeah.
with that
Yeah.
the newly created rock slope of the Harwood Road extension in the Foothills be covered with an
be covered with overburden organic material
for eventual greening up and a length of sound fencing be, that's where I lost.
Be erected in order to substitute for some of the lost parkland buffer. for the benefit of wildlife and the adjacent residents on Phantom Road.
For the benefit of wildlife and residents on Phantom Road?
Yeah, and the adjacent residents on Phantom Road.
And for clarity, it says that the newly created rock slope be covered and a sound fence be installed. It doesn't say who's doing it or the cost, or if it's the district, the budget amendment required.
Well, I guess we could just put a slight forwarding phrase with that staff be directed.
Okay, so I'm going to interject here. Notice the motion need to come prepared. And, we need to make sure that these do get forwarded on to staff, or at least presented in a way that they can be easily copied down. Really, at this point, I believe council's heard the motion a few times now. This is just simply a notice of motion, unless someone is prepared to basically consider this as a late item and go through that process, where we're going to move on. And I just suggest that Councillor Savage, you just send the full text of your notice of motion, so staff has it down accurately as they've gone through it a few times. Through to Councillor Gesselbrecht.
Yes, I've been involved in this discussion with the resident, and I understand.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Casper, I'm going to interject as well. We're not going to get into a discussion about this
Okay, all right.
particular. If we feel that it's, what the subject matter is of an emergent nature, and council so desires to deal with it this evening, given the fact it's only 8 o'clock, then what I would suggest is we treat it as a late item, and we vote on that, and then we move forward with discussing it. So really, it's what does council want to do? So Councillor Savage? Oh,
Yes, I'd be happy to do it as a late item. I thought the idea was with the notice of motion, if we dealt with it on the spot, we can just amend the motion. If it's not perfectly worded to Director Coates' satisfaction, we can easily amend it, but I think it captures everything that we're trying to do here, that's all. So I thought it could be either or. You could either do a late item or a notice.
Yeah, through to council, if you want to bring a late item, that's fine. The intent of late items is if they're of an emergent nature, meaning we need to, deal with them sooner rather than later. There's a sense of urgency, then that's what we should be doing. Notice of motion is just alerting council, hey, I'm bringing a motion forward to our next council, just giving you an FYI, and it's coming. So gives you maybe other councillors more time to prepare, research, and do whatever they need to do to get prepared for that notice of motion or the subject matter. So at this point, I'm gonna extend a little bit of latitude here on this. Do we want to look at it as a late item if it's felt it is of an emergent nature, and then we can discuss it further? So I saw Councillor Wilson, your hand went up.
Yeah. My preference is for Councillor Savage to put this in writing. It's the first time I'm hearing this, and there's a lot of holes. All due respect to Councillor Savage in what he's in the motion. So I would ask him to just email all of council and maybe put a bit more meat into his motion for the next council meeting. That's all.
CEO Campbell's got his hand up. I just, there may be information regarding whether or not this is a emergent issue or not. So CEO Campbell.
Yes, Your Worship, through you to council. Just so council's aware, I'm in the process of dealing with this. Have been for the last couple of weeks. Sent out an email to Mr. Murphy. What's today's Wednesday, probably Monday, saying that we're just waiting. I had a long discussion with the developer last week. They're doing up new plans to buffer that area, which we're expecting to be getting this week. So at this point, my preference would be for council just to leave it or notice a motion for the January meeting until I get more information on what the developer's planning on doing, so we can correct any concerns that the residents have.
And that would be the July 7th meeting, not January. That'd be a little bit of a wait, but
January is too far. July's better. Yeah.
yeah. Director Coates, I see your hand is up as well.
Yes, and just got the mute off. I just wanted to confirm that the process for notice of motion is that it would not be emailed out to council members. The business would be directed to staff and added to the agenda, and then council can have a fulsome discussion at the meeting.
Okay, okay, go ahead, Councillor Savage, and I might have a question for staff.
Yes, I'll withdraw my notice of motion, please. And as a courtesy, I'll forward my planned motion if it's needed, because we're going to stay in touch with staff to see if it's even needed before the next meeting. Thank you.
And just through to Director Coates, sorry, and I'm just trying to, I don't know if I'm just tired or what, but just understand the process a little bit better. And if I'm thinking it, maybe other councillors are thinking it as well. But just in terms of the process, of emailing a notice of motion. So it's not recommended that councillors email a notice of motion to other councillors?
When I look at the procedure bylaw, it talks about a notice of motion being given and added. It's usually provided to staff in two ways. It's provided to staff and put onto the agenda. The other way is that it is announced at the prior meeting and then placed on the agenda.
Okay.
I think you may be thinking of a process where a council member brings something as a late item, and then normally if they were here, they would hand it out to each member of council. And because we haven't had that luxury of being here together to hand things out, council members have been sending out their information when they intend to make a late item motion, just as information. And then if it gets approved, it gets added to the agenda.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. All right, so Councillor Savage it's up to you, Councillor Savage, if you want to keep it as a notice of motion or submit it as a motion for our next meeting. It's 6-1, half dozen the other at this point. Okay, so public clarification, we don't have that. And moving on to adjournment. So sorry, are there any other late items before I blast past that? No. Okay, so I'm going to move to adjourning the meeting. Thank you, everybody, and have a good night.